House Republicans unveiled their alternative budget yesterday, calling for some increased defense spending, a simplified tax code, and a repeal of the $787 billion economic recovery package. Joining us this morning is Congressman Eric Cantor of Virginia, the House Minority Whip, to talk about that and some other issues on the table as well. Good to have you, Congressman.
Good morning, Carl.
As always. Democrats have been saying for months, where are you? What's your solution? Are you the party of no? And you've come out with this. Given the math in the House and the Senate, what's the hope here? What do you hope to get done?
Well, these two budgets, the majority budget and then now our alternative, represent two very different visions for where this country needs to go. And it's actually a very timely occasion for us to put both of these visions on display while we have President Obama over at the G20 in Europe. Because really, if you look at it, Europeans are very interested in the security long term. Americans tend to be a little bit more interested in opportunity. That's where our budget goes. Our budget speaks to the families and the small businesses out there who are struggling right now, trying to make the bills at the end of the month, trying to keep the doors open. Our budget speaks to lowering spending, lowering the deficit, lowering the debt on our future generations. We go in and we try and deal with the entitlement situation. None of this is being done by the majority's budget.
Deficit spending is still going to be an issue, even under your budget.
Oh, there's no question, because I think that right now we've got to focus on one thing, and that is jobs. Our budget will demonstrate we will create a lot more jobs than the majority's budget, because we're focused on trying to get this economy going back in without trying to expand the reach of government.
So the argument that, all right, we've got $500 billion in deficits, that's just a sign that that's the signal of how deep a hole the economy's in? Is that where we're going?
I think that's an accurate statement, that we have dug a pretty deep hole, and we have a responsible way to get out of that hole, but putting us on the glide path to trying to do something about the pool of red ink here in Washington.
You've called the president's budget out of the mainstream, but his popularity numbers, as you know, are still in the 60s. They've, in some cases, on certain issues, tripled since Election Day. How is that out of the mainstream when you've got approval numbers like that?
Well, I think there's a difference between the person and the policies, and that has borne out in the polling over the last several weeks as well. Certainly, President Obama has a lot of personal appeal. He has a lot of charisma, and he's a great speaker. And frankly, he's an intelligent guy. So that's why we want to continue to work with him. But it's his policies that we're very concerned about. And I think the American people now understand that when you go about trying to double the debt load in this country in 5 years and then triple it in 10 years, that speaks, I think, to the next generation. What does that say? And if we go back and remember that what built this country is the optimism looking forward, that somehow in America we don't need everything 100% certain, that we'll take a risk if it's an intelligent risk, and we believe in opportunity. That's where our budget is focused, and to make sure that we give everybody that equal opportunity.
It looks like cap and trade is not going to be fast-tracked, thanks to an amendment that was passed yesterday, right?
Well, I mean, again, I think that we can hope that is the case coming out of the Senate. Carl, I got to know.
Is that a good sign? I guess I'm wondering. I mean, can we look at issues, big spending issues like health care and education, and say at least Democrats aren't going to be running to the hills with these things?
Well, I think if you ask Mr. Waxman, who unveiled his version of the cap and trade legislation this week, he would probably differ with you as to what could be fast-tracked or not. But certainly it's a good thing if that is put on the shelf, because that proposal, there are economists out there who have said anywhere from $1,800 to more than $3,200 of additional tax on every household in America would be the result of a cap and tax scheme.
Yeah. I guess my question leads to, isn't there a group of moderate blue dogs, in the case of Democrats, moderate Republicans, who are bringing the president's budget in from the extremes that you say? Well, are doing some of your work for you?
Yeah, and I think so, Carl. I think that's the key. I mean, American people are a center-right people. We are trying to pull the policies that are inherent in this administration budget back to the middle, and I think our alternative does that. Because, as you say, we don't get necessarily all the things that we want done in the 5 or 10-year budget window, but what we do try and accomplish is to put us on the right path back to economic growth, back to restoring the ability for people to make their own choices in health care, at the same time trying to address the red ink and entitlements in this country that will sink us and will turn us into a much more socialist model like Europe if we don't.
Right. On the AIG bonuses, on taxing those bonuses, House passed a weaker bill that isn't quite as dramatic as the one that was passed a few weeks ago. Senate seems to be putting it on the back burner. Has the anger from that subsided, do you think?
Well, I would say this, Carl, the bill that passed yesterday may even be scarier because what it did is it put Treasury in the position to determine what is a reasonable bonus, what is reasonable compensation of entities that it feels are in danger or may not be in bankruptcy.
Right, but at least there's room for judgment, I guess, is what one would argue.
The problem is, do you trust the government, and given its track record in operating enterprises like the post office, like Freddie and Fannie? I mean, come on. I mean, we have to get back to the model of private sector innovation and ingenuity, get out of the fact that we think that all the answers are here in this town.
A lot to deal with in the coming weeks, Congressman. It's been great talking to you.
Absolutely, Carl.
Congressman Eric Cantor. Back